place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Tuesday, December 16th, 2025, and this is episode 1107 of Living Free in Tennessee, and it's a Tuesday show, so we're going to be heating up with the last solo show for me of the year, actually. Kiri, I see that you are in my comments, and I'm wondering if you can email me the link you texted me yesterday, because I realized just now, seeing you, that it is not in my show notes, and I'd love to have it in my show notes. So hopefully you can do that real quick, and I'll make sure to get it in the show notes today, because I wanted to talk about that. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? The title of the show is Stop Letting Other People Decide Who You Are. So it's one of those shows, guys. It's one of those shows. I kind of went back and forth on if we should do a happy Christmas episode or something or what for the last show. But after the way last week ended, I thought this would be a good fit. And I was seeing a lot of activity on this topic online. So we'll be talking about being a little too sensitive to criticism and letting other people decide who you are rather than being the one who decides who you are. And that's a trap that it's very easy to get programmed into. Also, I spilled my coffee. Look, I have coffee. It's from Hollow Roast. Shock, I know. And it's actually right where my keyboard usually is, but my keyboard's being slid aside. Anyway, we're also going to go through our usual segments. Thank you for sending that email, Kiri. And then we'll also talk about what's happening for the rest of the year as far as show-wise and going into January, those sorts of things. So it's a usual show. Now, if you're in the comments, and I see some of you are, and you have a question or something you want to hear about, write the word question or comment in all caps so I can see it, because then I can start it and work it into the show later. Okay, before we jump into that, I want to talk about our featured event of today's show, and you can find it at thecombatmidwife.com. March 7th, we are doing a very special training session with the Combat Midwife at the Base Camp Lodge. It's actually the first class we've booked there that somebody else is doing, so I'm kind of excited about that, and I want to learn about it. And I was actually talking with her assistant today just about what the class all covers, and it covers more. So a lot of people hear combat midwife, they think birth, they think, I don't need that. Okay, yeah, but did you know that if a woman gets a UTI and you don't treat it, she could be dead in 3 days? She might not be, but it could go that poorly. And in a situation where sanitation isn't very good and you don't have access to care, what do you do to help somebody in your group with that? Maybe take the class and learn, and that would really help you bone up. Like, we're so quick to take these Stop the Bleed courses, which are well worth it. But what about the ongoing care that could happen, or how to deal with emergency situations if you are in one and somebody near you goes into labor and you can't get them where they need to go? One of the things I really liked about the Encyclopedia of Country Living is it has a chapter on unexpected home births, and she tells the story of a woman in Alaska who you had to fly in to get in, and her husband flew out to get something to come back and get her, and then they were going to leave together, and I can't remember why he had to leave first. And then the snows came and she got snowed in and had to birth her baby by herself with, had anything gone wrong, absolutely no access to medical care. So that's a kind of a cool class. But I think the bigger impact of it, just like with the Stop the Bleed class, is you take a class like this and you learn a lot of things you didn't really know, or ways to address problems that can keep you from having bigger problems. You see signs of things in advance. You can tell, like I was able to assess somebody from across the room by their body language that not only were they stung by a bee, they were allergic to bees, right? And then I knew what to do. That happened at an event I was at recently. And I knew where the supplies were to handle it, right? Well, okay, so are you that good with babies, young children? And if there is a tornado and you have babies or young children, and or a woman in your life, or you are the woman in your life, what do you do when things happen? That's what this class is about. Check it out at thecombatmidwife.com. The class is 50% off right now, I think through Christmas. So get signed up if you can and let her know you're coming. I don't know what else you'll go home with. I know you go home with a booklet. I don't know if there's anything else included in that, but of course you'll also get a beautiful Base Camp Lodge lunch with it that comes from the homestead here and from the network. Speaking of the network, the reason I wanted a link from Kiri is that at my spring workshop, she agreed to make a custom rub and custom sauce for me. And it, of course, includes hollow roast coffee. So you can go to thunderhillfarm.com right now, and there's a category there that says LFTN collaborations. I will also include that link in the show notes, but you can get the product right there. If you go to all products, I'm going there right now. If you click on all products, you'll see it. And then on the left-hand side, it says LFTN collaborations. You can get the grilling spice in 3 and 6 ounces and the sauce, which is delicious. And we will have it available here for sale as well. I have been using the rub in particular on all. I've used it on duck, I've used it on chicken, I've used it on lamb, and I've used it on beef. It's good in every iteration. It's just delicious. So definitely check that out. We'll be doing some videos on how we've been building that into our life here, but it is over at thunderhillfarm.com. Makes our life better and is a collaboration with a good friend from the network. I always love it when things like that come together. So check it out. I do want to thank 2 sponsors today. One, Agris Tax Advice. Matthew Sursley from agristaxadvice.com can work with you to keep more of your money in your pocket, assuming that you pay taxes. And if you're one of those people who doesn't ever owe taxes, and by which I don't mean doesn't get a tax return. I mean, you pay 0 taxes. Maybe you're below the income level that he needs to work with. But if you are earning money, especially if you have a small business or you're in income categories that would make you at risk for the alternative minimum tax rate, you might want to talk to Matthew. Check out agristaxadvice.com/LFTM. There is a downloadable guide that you can check out that I actually need to re-download and check out. That's one of the things I like to do at the end of the year to get ready for the next year is bone up on something that I'm not as organized in as I should be. Now, I've worked with Matthew for a couple of years, really enjoyed having him assess the financial setup here and educate me about different write-offs I could take. The thing that was most beneficial was I had to communicate to him where all the money comes and where all the money goes. And that forced me to get some things much more automated than they were. So that's been a big benefit for me, completely separate from what he offers. I have more time back in my life because of Matthew. So anyway, check that out. agristaxadvice.com/LFTN for that free download. Our second sponsor of today's show is Kerry Brown from Strong Roots Resources, who is the Food Forest Whisperer here. He will be out this weekend at the Christmas reception, and I'm hoping he's going to do a few things in the Food Forest. We'll see how that goes. He's actually bringing a pretty cool piece of furniture to me that he picked up near him, and he's being my mule, if you will. It's a furniture mule instead of a drug mule, right? So it's a Hoosier cabinet that I've been kind of looking at Hoosier cabinets for a couple years, and where my coffee station is just an old kitchen cabinet with a couple drawers that was here when I moved in here, and it's the wrong size and it's starting to fall apart and it's chipboard. So I thought, well, a Hoosier cabinet would make a great coffee station, and then finally the right one came up. So it's been, I don't want to spend $1,000 on the thing, but I also don't want one that's falling apart, which kind of negates the whole purpose. So he'll be bringing that out, but they do classes, and he's a great consultant for small scale farms, for your homestead. Even if you're doing an urban, he did a bunch of urban permaculture work at his own urban lot in Knoxville, Tennessee, before they moved to a larger property where they are living off grid. Also has insights on off grid living. Check him out, strongrootsresources.com. Okay, Tori made it today. I'm proud of you, Tori, for making it to the live stream. Thank you. Looks like Pippinized is here as well. Hello, Pippinized. Okay, how does the rest of the year look I could go into Tales from the Prepper Pantry, and it's a really good segment this time, but how does the rest of the year look? Last year, I got a little upside down. And the way I got upside down is I underestimated how many versions of the night before Christmas poem reading I had. And what we started doing years ago, and I only had two versions, Australian and the real one originally. Um, we started reading different versions of the poem, and then I had a Scottish one, and then I had an intellectual one, a Cajun one, a redneck one, all sorts of different versions, a musical one. And last year I started them too late. So this year that's not going to happen. Do I know which day they're starting? No, because that's on tomorrow's to-do list. But I'm pretty sure it's the 19th. But they just sort of added up. And so I love that poem. I remember as a child getting ready for Christmas, and we pull out, the box of decorations and decorated the living room and the tree and the front door and the book, the children's book, the night before Christmas came out, and the parents would read it to us. In later years, we'd just read it ourselves. I might still have that book somewhere. I should look through my books. It's probably down in the cabin if I do. But I just loved the poem. I loved the magic of that part of Christmas as a kid. And it's always, I had a pretty cool childhood, obviously. It's always just been part of the magic of Christmas is that poem. And interestingly enough, our choir on Sunday performed it. So I'll actually get that link out too. I think it's only up for 3 days. It'll go out in the Monday mail, which is going out not on Monday this week. What I learned this week is if I have a choir performance and my car blows up and I don't even remember. Oh, and then we were also at a Christmas market this weekend. The Monday mail does not go out on time. Oh, shipping deadline was Monday. So I did a lot. I was in the roasting shack all day. That mail will go out later today, but I'll make sure to put the YouTube link. But they did a musical version of it, and the original musical version of it I have for my podcast is also that choir. So we did it years ago, and we did a repeat. We did a lessons and carols this year. So that was one of the fun carols that we did. So those will start around the 19th, and they usually happen at 5 p.m., assuming that my scheduling tool works to release them at 5 p.m. so you can listen to them, right after dinner or before dinner. And then up until Christmas Eve, and then nothing. Because after this Friday's show, you're not going to see me again until next year. I'm taking 2 weeks off. I am going to go skiing with my family in Idaho. I am going to spend some time here doing what I always do, which is completely disconnect from everything. And I'm going to disconnect a little harder this year than I ever have. However, it's also the reason I do that is to really take some extra time for reflection as we do the heavy lift of going into what are we accomplishing in 2026, personally, business-wise as well. I've been working on this already. That's why I was talking about the word of the year last week. And I'll be closed, basically. I am closed. Yes, Tori, I'm going to Idaho to go skiing. Maybe you can figure out where. I haven't skied in years, so we'll see how that goes. I've been having this knee problem, so I don't know how skiing is going to feel particularly, but we'll see. But I thought, while you're doing reflections, a good time to revisit my 3 things. So I will have pre-scheduled the My 3 Things series of episodes that we've already done, just as a replay for you. And then I will see you on January 2nd, which is a Friday, for the Homestead Happenings show. And then we'll be back to 2 times a week starting in January. And one of the decisions I get to make during this 2-week period of time is, am I going back to 3 times a week, or are we staying at 2 times a week? I can tell you that dropping to 2 times a week was necessary for me to perform at the level I was required to perform at for Hollow Roast Coffee. Thank you, everybody who has been ordering coffee. It's been really fun in the roasting shack, if I'm honest, and but also busy. And something as cool as we sold out of the carols and Christmas tins that I sent to the Dickens market in one day. That was cool. I have a few of those left online at hollowroast.com. But so that was fun. So we're gonna get that, and then I also wanted to share with you that I did a thing. And you know how I tell you, if you want to change a habit, that you shouldn't wait till the next year to change the habit. Well, I went back to CrossFit because I needed some harder workouts than I'm giving myself at home. And I would say that a month in, I am back on the CrossFit train. The thing is, the CrossFit program I'm doing is not proper CrossFit. They have a different altered version that's not as hard, which was good for me because I have a knee problem right now. And it focuses a little bit more on basic motions and less like super heavy weightlifting. So I've been enjoying that a lot. And I only share that story because if you're thinking I'm going to get my diet in order and my exercise in order right after the holidays, tomorrow start. If on Christmas you take a couple of days and you say, I'm going to eat what I want, that's fine. But if you know you want to establish a new habit now, don't wait till January because you're less likely to succeed. Start now. Start now. If you think this is aimed at you, you're right. It's absolutely aimed at you. I don't know who you are, but it's aimed at you. So I had made the decision to go back to CrossFit in October. It took me another month to change my schedule enough to be able to get there at the time of day where I needed to, because it's an hour drive for me. So it's a serious commitment, guys, when you live where I live. And I have most of the pieces that I would need for a CrossFit workout here. The only thing I lack is like a rig where I can pull up. So like I could totally get that together. I have a feeling that after a few months of this, I'm going to start thinking I want to be doing my CrossFit workouts by myself back at the house just to avoid all the driving. But I did manage to time one of the drives with choir because I'm going there anyway. And then that actually means it's only once a week that I'm driving. So ready for the first segment? Is anybody ready for the first segment? I'm ready for the first segment. Tales from the Prepper Pantry, where we talk about using what you store and storing what you use. I want to talk to you today about beef math. Beef math, Nicole. Yes, beef math. Beef math is figuring out how much per pound of beef you pay when you buy the whole animal, which in fact required me to call the processor because I had two ways to do this. One was to basically go through every individual piece of beef and write it down, which is what I've done in the past, or call the processor and ask them if they had the information, which they did. So he's close. So he's within 5 pounds. And I decided that was good enough for beef math because cows weigh a lot. So as y'all know, we eat a lot of beef here. And the money we made on the sheep went to beef. So I have lamb from the sheep, but any animal we sold, it either went to offset fencing supplies or whatever, or to pay for beef. That's how that kind of worked out. And I use the beef we buy to serve, like when I tell you we're doing a farm to table dinner, or if you're coming to an event here and it's chili and there's beef in the chili, it's from these cows. It's not from store beef. And right now, that's actually financially working in my favor. So I was at Sam's Club this weekend, which I will maybe tell that story on Friday. But I was at Sam's Club unexpectedly this weekend because I got stuck there and I was hungry. And so I went in and decided I was going to buy a sushi roll and eat it. And while I was there, I just kind of cruised through the meat section because I was wondering, like, what does meat cost these days? And it was $18 to $30 a pound. I think the ground beef was in the 12 to 15 range there, which, considering that a year ago it was $6 and people were freaking out, $6 or $8 and people were freaking out, I was like, wow, no wonder people are complaining about beef. And I was at a Thai food restaurant on Sunday and they had a beef surcharge. If you ordered beef off the menu, there was a surcharge. So I see why. So we got 2 cows. I split 1 cow with a friend and the other cow is ours. And the way we pay for it, again, if we sell the sheep through the business, I don't like track the exact money, but I track how much is sold. And that amount of money is what can be used towards the cow for the business. Okay. The cow we buy that's like our cow that we eat here is a cow that Tactical and I go halvesies on, basically. And then it goes in the freezer here. The freezers are in 2 different locations at this point. So the one that we bought hanging weight, so that's after it's been skinned and eviscerated, was 715 pounds. Okay. That cow cost me $2,307. They charge you what it is on the hoof, by the way. That's a law here that has to happen. And the processing fee was $285. And I got 370 pounds of beef out of that. I did really well on that cow, getting a lot of beef out of that. And the reason I got so many pounds of meat is based on the cuts I chose, which if you took so you bought a whole pig class, I talk about some cuts choices that I make that help me get more of the full poundage of an animal from a butcher, but it does mean I do more work. An example of that is I got the whole eye of round, both eyes of round. That's the ham basically in the back of the cow. That's a big hunk of meat, by the way. I have 3 of those to deal with. And then I will either cut them down into individual cuts if I want to, or cure them into sandwich meat or into basturma, or I don't know what I'm doing with them yet. I could grind them, but probably won't. But having that, big, lean hunk of meat is something that's really good for some of the meat curing goals I have for 2026. Okay, Martinson family, welcome to the live stream. So the math for that worked out to $7 a pound. Now, when I started doing this podcast, I was paying $3 a pound for beef from the same farmer by the time all the math worked out. So that can tell, we have more than doubled. And I would say that doubling has happened in the last 3 years. So 3 years ago, it started going up. Last year, it went way up. And this year, it went up some more. So that was that animal. And that worked out really well. This is what's fun. This is like an exact illustration of the finances of the situation. The second cow that I split halvesies with somebody, and that half a cow was bought by my business, right? 750 pounds hanging weight, which was $2,420, of which I paid half. And the processing fee was $376, so more than my cow because of the cuts we had done. And we got 325 pounds of meat. So less meat off a cow that weighs more. Interesting, huh? Very interesting. And I don't think it's because it was a big boned cow, guys. I think it's 100% the choices that were made. So the choices we make for cuts on that one, I center around her choices. And what I figured out is you do one cut sheet for the whole animal and split it later, but you can make choices for each half of the animal. If you do 2 cut sheets, they charge you the base processing fee for both. So that's another way to save your money. So I just called in the cut sheet for that. So the math on that one was $8.60 a pound average. And that's for steaks, ground, everything, right? So what that means is that we are still beating the grocery store price. We are getting better quality beef, but prices has definitely gone up. And, it's $1.60 more a pound for the cow that had one of those rounds cut up and some other cuts done and smaller packaging for the beef, the ground beef. Those are the 3 primary things here. Martinson family says a bred heifer is running 7,000 Canadian here. Holy cow, literally. That's a lot. So that's how the beef math worked out. Now, that is a big chunk of change for food all at one time, right? If you think about $2,307 for our beef needs in the house here for 1 year, but then divide that by 12. That's how much it is a month. It starts coming down into, actually, I see how that relates to my grocery bill at that point, right? That's less than $200 a month. And then divide that over 4.5 weeks per month about, right? It starts coming down into the, okay, I see how that fits with my grocery bill thing. And that at that rate is, we got more than a pound of meat a day out of that cow. And anyway, that's one of the ways we fill the pantry. It's worth the expense of having a deep freezer that does fit in one freezer, by the way, with room. There was room for a whole lamb-sickle that's being cooked this week in that freezer with that cow. So uh, that's a whole nother story. We'll be roasting a lamb for the party this week, and that's going to be a whole. I've never done a lamb, so we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be delicious, though. We are also getting ready for that event, so we're going to be putting out pickled things, cured things, all the fun things we've made. I don't even know what's getting pulled out and served at that event. I will find out when I start pulling things out on Friday for it, but part of when we're putting up abundance in the summer and fall, what I'm thinking about is, oh, I could do this one thing I don't really eat very much of, but people at the event would eat it, so then we put it up. So that's great. Tori wants to know how long a full cow will last UNT. About a year. It lasts about a year. So we went through not only 2.5, but an extra quarter of a cow. So we went through 2 3/4 cow last year between us and all of the events that we had here that we served it at. So there you go. Mona says, could have bought ground beef for 9.99 euros a kilogram today. That's a good price. That's, that is less than what it is here at this time. We have a lot of high beef costs, which we saw coming when we had the drought that caused farmers to kill the beef. And it's sort of like it's a delayed effect because of how butchering works and how long it takes to grow out cows. I think that's what's really impacting it. And then now people are panicking because beef's expensive. So as a result of the cow, I'm pre-making burger patties, breakfast sausage with the pig that we also got, meatloafs for convenience, stuff like that. And I'm just learning how to stuff sausages into the casings. I'm not great at it yet, but I did one 10 pounds worth session, and I will do another one soon. But I'm learning how to get that done. One of the things I'm learning is not all casings are created equal. So we did collagen casings. I took a recommendation from a friend, and they were just tougher than I wanted, even though they're quote unquote edible. So I may end up going to natural casings, or I may look for another brand of collagen casing to see if I can find one that's a little bit better. Or, there's some other things I can do when using them that can make them work better. But yeah, learning a lot about that. And that's part of the fun of a homestead, right? Is learning how to do things like that. Next year, I do hope to have a lot more cured meats. I'm doing more cured meat work this year than I have because I have created time in my schedule to do that. Next up, we have the frugality tip. And this one is just a reminder. I don't have one in for Margot right now. The day after Christmas is coming. Do with that information what you will. There's already all sorts of Black Friday sales. What often happens between Christmas and about mid-January is all of a sudden, things really do go on sale. And if there's something you've been waiting for, that might be the time to look for it. And, like Margot bought a bunch of closeout Christmas stockings last year, handed them to me so I could hand them out to people who were participating in the LFTN Christmas stocking exchange. And that's how she got that done, right? At first it's half off, and then it's 75% off, and pretty soon you're almost getting Christmas closeout stuff for free. But also other things that, they may look like they're on a good deal right now. Sometimes it's just that they mark it up to mark it down, if you catch my meaning. But also, and there are some good deals right now, but just keep your eyes open. I've gotten all sorts of supplies for my business that I knew I needed and all sorts of different things just by paying attention in this time period. And part of it is that I think people spend so much going into Christmas, they don't have a repository for the next 6 weeks. And so that 6 weeks after Christmas, retailers start freaking out. And then when they freak out, they lower their prices. And then that's where you jump in, right? That's how you look at sort of the long term versus the short term. Next up, I want to talk about some featured forage for today. And this is a segment I used to do all the time that I'm just bringing back. So we had a deep freeze this week. It went down to, I don't know, like 12 degrees. Some people will say it went to 0. It just depends where you were. And that means nothing's left to forage, right? Wrong. That's when you start looking at things below grade. And one of my favorites at this time of year it requires you to know where it is before this time of year. So you go look for it in the fall. You look for the flowers. You mark where the flowers are. And then you start digging for that plant in the fall. And it's called the Jerusalem artichoke. Now you can buy them and cultivate them, and you will get bigger tubers if you do that. But also in Tennessee and all over the United States, really, they will grow wild. So you can mark them in the fall and then dig right at this time of year. And what's happened is all of the energy for the plant is in the root right now. And that's when you want to harvest the root. They're a little hard to clean. They kind of look like ginger. So they have corners. What I do is I run it underwater with a brush to get into all the nooks and crannies. I don't worry about taking the skin off of them. I'll just eat the skin. And then the way I like to cook them is to slice them up and steam them or boil them. It depends on what technology I have in the kitchen at that time, until they're ready to be mashed. And then I puree them with garlic, salt, pepper, and butter. And it's not exactly like mashed potatoes. It's more of a it's got a slightly different mouth feel, I would say. It's more of you can almost see through it, or clear, but not quite clear. But it complements a steak really well without the same glycemic impact of a white potato. So that's a really good way to have them. Sauteing them up is really delicious. They can cause you to have a lot of gas, particularly if you eat them uncooked, which you can do, but a lot of people get a lot of gas that way. So if you're going to try them, try a little bit first and then see how it affects your system. They're called fartichokes for a reason. And I don't know why they're called sunchokes or Jerusalem artichokes exactly. They don't really taste like artichokes, but it is what it is. Tori says sunchokes grow wild in my garden. Yeah, they grow wild all over the place. In the show notes, I've included just a link to the Wikipedia posting on Jerusalem artichokes, because I figured you can see what the flower and the leaf looks like there. And it's less likely to be one of those links that disappears because somebody takes their website down. And I actually should go through my pictures and start doing some write-ups on my website about this. We'll see how that goes. But I think the coolest thing about Jerusalem artichokes is they grow themselves. So when you find a wild patch on your land or nearby and you mark it and you're like, that's where it is, this time of year you can go dig up those tubers and not eat them and plant them. And wherever you plant them, they're probably going to grow. They're probably going to take it over. Be careful where you plant them, because they will take it over. One time I put a nice row in my garden, and they've been in that garden ever since. And that was 17 years ago now. So it's one of the local jokes is that I actually bought and planted Jerusalem artichokes. And I was like, yes, they bloomed. And I looked around the holler and they were blooming all over the holler. And I went to the farmer's market and told that story. And the farmers were laughing at me because why would you plant Jerusalem artichokes, right? Well, there you go. Because you're from Oregon and didn't realize that they were going to be everywhere. So be careful where you plant them, but also, it's a free food source that if you're worried about developing calories, there's one for you. Tori says, do those store well over winter? I store them in the ground, Tori, and I just dig them up when I want some. That's why I like to know where they are. You can store them in your root cellar and they last pretty well there, but they last even better just in the ground, but they'll start growing in the spring again. That's what they do. Every so often, if you kind of dig them up and move them around, they do better. They cultivate better because they have more space, but they are what people would call invasive. They're prolific is probably the word I'd like to use. And yeah, the Washington winter should still be fine. It's just maybe you're not digging in your ground as easily. Anyway, okay, next up, Operation Independence, where we talk about building local ongoing revenue into our lives. And I want to talk about the Pick Tennessee store, which is a government program, by the way. And I've been a Pick Tennessee product at Holler Roast for a while. And I never really understood all of the things they do until last year. They were going to a film festival. Last minute, they're like, hey, if anybody wants a table, come out. I wasn't doing anything that Saturday, so I was like, I'll come out. And I got to know these guys, super nice guys. And then I was at the state fair, right? That's how I got to the state fair. Um, they are just out there promoting locally produced products, farm to table products, farms, that sort of thing. And they got an outside space at the Dickens of a Christmas Franklin Christmas Market, which was last weekend. Also last weekend, we fell off a weather temperature cliff, and you know, the market didn't happen the days it was supposed to. So it was supposed to be Saturday, Sunday, and I sent them enough product for what I thought a Saturday, Sunday would do, and figured if I get some of it back, whatever. They have the only 1 ounce espresso bites left that will come in the fancy boxes, by the way, with the little red bow. That's all in their hands right now. And they worked when they found out that there was not going to be a Sunday market. They worked their buns off to put up on the Pick Tennessee store. It's picktnstore.com. All of the products that had been given to them, so that they could continue to sell it online to their network of 50 or 60,000 people or so online, that sort of thing. So you can order Hollow Roast things at picktnstore.com right now. And that's what's left that didn't sell at the market. But I sold out of the carols and coffee tins. I'm just saying. Those things have been going like hotcakes. Like, I was really surprised how well they sold from my table right before the Master Singers concert. I brought them on a whim thinking nobody's going to want these. 10 sells, another 10 sells, right? Like, they kept selling. So I was very pleased about that too. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that they're doing sort of an open housey thing, I think, tomorrow for State Fair employees. They have a store actually at the State Fair, and I think the building rents out for part of the year to other event uses, but pretty cool space. And I know they'll be there tomorrow trying to sell some more products. And I think their plan long term is to have this online store presence. So I see it as a great revenue source. So might as well just tap into that as well. That's kind of what my thought is, but also really enjoy working with those guys. So check it out. You'll see other things that are made in Tennessee that are for sale. Some of them Christmas themed, some of them not. That's how I have connected with a lot more farms for the farm to table experiences here. I'm connected with a lot of homesteaders and farmers, and they really helped me doing that farm to table dinner, but also having found some other farms I didn't know existed by going to the Pick Tennessee Fair experience was really cool. Okay. But you guys aren't here for all that, are you? I think you're here for the main topic of today's show, and probably to find out what my word of the year is, which I pulled the rug out from under you last week on. But the good news is, over the weekend, I chose a word. And I'm glad I didn't rush it, because I would have chose a totally different word had I rushed it that day. But I appreciate everybody's suggestions. It actually did help guide me toward a word of the year. I want to talk about something that we haven't talked about in a while, and that's letting other people live your life for you. By which I mean, through social pressure, get you to behave in ways that are counter to your essence, to your purpose. It's an exhausting game that nobody wins. Stop doing it. What do I mean? Everybody who listens to this show has felt this at some point in their life, right? It's the peer pressure trap, where you're trying to be accepted and part of a group, and you may not even know you're doing it. You may think, I'm individual and I'm fine, but then somebody says something critical under their breath and the rug's ripped out from under you. You do something, like you work really hard. It's the peer pressure trap. You work really hard on something and you do it. Somebody criticizes it and you just put your heart into it. And suddenly you're questioning everything, not just the thing you did, but your whole identity. It's a really bad trap to get in. And sometimes it's not that dramatic, right? It's just that you're like, hey, I'm going to start a coffee brand and roast coffee. I'm going to ship it to people so I don't have to have a cafe, and I'm going to do my best I could possibly do to roast the best coffee and find the best beans to roast. That's what I'm going to do. Do you really want to make money that way with your degree? First question. Are you sure you're going to like to do that? That's just grunt work. Second question. when I made that declaration, I was not living the life I was supposed to live according to other people. I was living the life I wanted to build for myself. And that really happened with Hollow Roast, where I would say what I wanted to do to people and they would, and I was already doing it by that point. And they were like, it's monkey work. Okay, well, apparently I like doing monkey work, so I'm going to go do monkey work over here. Even though, yes, I have a college degree that I could put to use in some other capacity if I wanted to. But this gets work, right? Somebody criticizes you online. What happens, my friends, when somebody criticizes you online? You put a picture of your reorganization of your living room, and somebody's like, I think your curtains are ugly. You take it personally. You go out to your friend network, or you go on social media's friend network, worse, and you look for validation that that person's a poopy head for calling your curtains ugly. And then you spiral and you talk and you talk and you talk, and maybe that person talks back. And then there's a piece of you that thinks maybe my curtains might be a little ugly. I mean, they're not new, but I always liked them, but there's a little wear around the edges. And you pull them down and you put curtains up you like less because those are the curtains you can afford. You stop doing something or you change something that you didn't think was bad or wrong because 2 weeks ago on the internet, somebody said something critical and you internalized it too much. The information or the news bulletin on this one is that when that happens in that way, you have just let somebody else live your life for you and make a choice for you. By investing the time, this is all your fault, by the way, by investing the time in getting validation for your curtains looking pretty, you actually gave power to the critique that your curtains were ugly. That's the one part of it you can control. And here's what made me think of it. I've been online and I watch people online. I'm friends with people online, and a homesteader posted in defense of one of her choices on her homestead why she did it after receiving critiques about the thing she did from people on the internet who she's never met, who have no idea why she was doing the thing she does. I know this homesteader well, and she had once questioned if she was ever a proper homesteader. And I'm using this example. She will probably know who she is, because I don't think what she posted was wrong at all. I actually think it was a masterful post that she put on and a masterful not spiraling. Okay. But I saw that and it reminded me of a lot of other folks in our network who I've seen get upset for days about things that people said about them or what they're doing on the internet or what real life people said about them. And me knowing that she may know that I'm talking about her, by the way, I'm doing that because I know she knows I don't mean it bad. So I probably should say that just so she knows I don't mean it bad. Think about that, though. This person once questioned if they were even a homesteader. And the truth of the matter is, we're either all homesteaders or none of us are homesteaders by the high measure of what a homesteader is, right? If you are doing homesteading things, you're a homesteader. If you are working on turning your home into a home that works for you instead of a home you have to work to afford, you're getting value from your home, whether it is a tiny lot of land, no land, or 20 acres of land. You are implementing the mindset of a homesteader. And if anybody tells you you're not a homesteader because you don't bake your own bread, or because you don't raise chickens, or because you buy stuff at the grocery store, they can pound sand. And if you give them any of your attention at all, you're wasting your most important resource source, and that's time. So stop letting other people decide who you are. If you think you're a homesteader, you are. And if you think you aren't a homesteader, you aren't. It's that easy. I think your life is like your garden, right? You cultivate your garden. Nature will plant what she wants in your garden if there is space made for it. Meaning, if you don't plant anything in your garden, nature will plant whatever nature wants to plant there. When you cultivate your garden, the things in your garden that grow are the things you want to grow. And the things you don't want to grow, you pull out. This totally works analogous in your life, where your day-to-day life, if you don't decide what's going to grow in your life in your day-to-day choices, other people will plant things in there that they want to grow in your life. And that can really put you in a situation where you wake up one day and you're like, who am I? Why am I here? I feel like I have no confidence at all. I thought I knew what I was doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And I hate every day of my life when I get up. People are predictable. People will plant in you things they want if they get the chance. And it's up to you to keep them from doing that if you don't want those things planted there. Now, sometimes you do want something planted there. Like Spirit Go has planted things in me. And he's like, I think this would go well there, Nicole. And I'm like, yeah, that fits my purpose. Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that little boost. Right? That's different than it's monkey work. Why are you even slinging coffee? Right? I think the predictable thing about people is there will always be somebody judging you. And society has cultivated in its culture that we should please. We should be good little sheep and please. And so we feel the pain when we get that critical comment, even if we shouldn't feel the pain at all because they're poopy heads and they're wrong. My curtains are not ugly. You may think, I mean, somebody walked up to me who I know well, and she's like, the color you chose for your living room, I hate. And it's just sort of like this mustard yellow for an accent wall that I have. And I was like, oh, you hate it? She goes, yeah. I'm like, okay. I actually felt nothing about that because I was like, I really like that color. And I still really like that color. And she doesn't. And it's not her house. It's my house. Right? Oh, well. And that's the same thing about a critical comment on the internet. When whatever, your curtains aren't ugly to you. Maybe they are ugly to that person. Why do I care if they're ugly to that person? But we've been taught to please. And maybe our decorating choices are wrong. And oh no, and next thing you know, you've just spent half your afternoon on the internet trying to get support from all your friends about the color of your curtains. Living for approval from other people sets a foundation for broken boundaries. We talk about boundaries all the time. How do you set boundaries? Well, if you're trying to please other people all the time, you're going to break the boundaries because they're going to want more because people are predictable. And then you're going to have broken boundaries, a broken heart, and potentially a broken life because you've made all your decisions based on them instead of what is best for your forward momentum. And the thing I want you to get from me today is that you are enough. You are enough. You're really good at what you do best. I don't know what you do best. You may not 100% know what you do best, but you're good at something and you're probably good at a lot of some things. A friend of mine today, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, told me that, and she's my age, her person broke up with her. Her person who she's been dating from a distance came into her life in person and broke up with her. And within 2 weeks was dating somebody else. And within a month was married. And she's never been married. And she thought she was going to finally, this was the one, I'm going to get married, blah, blah, blah. It didn't happen for her. And all I could say to her is, you are the most giving, loving person I know, and you're loyal. And I never understood why men did not value that in you. It's because whoever she was meeting for whatever reason have not valued that. And they've valued other things, like somebody who puts out, for example. I don't know what this person valued in the other person when he left her, but I know that he didn't see what he had. And I think that's why we see a lot of relationships in the state they're in. It's because we've gone a little too far to the surface and not deeply enough in how relationships happen. And part of that has to do with living for approval from other people instead of living within the context of your purpose. So I don't think it works if you live for approval. You'll hesitate to do things if you're always do things you should do. I've actually faced some of this year where I still have some social pressure not to do some things that I want to do. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the thing. And everybody who knows me closely, 100% supportive, by the way, because I will not keep you in my life if you're not. And no problem doing those things in front of them. A random stranger walks into the room and I'm like, I need to do the thing. This is not socially acceptable. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing the thing anyway, because I know it's the right thing for me, right? So that's always fun. So we forget that critical statements and attacks and objections are the best thing that can happen to us when we're doing something. Like me getting that little feeling of pressure and then going ahead and making the choice to do the thing I know is right for me. It's actually really good for me because that solidifies my belief in myself. It solidifies my commitment to moving forward. And if it happens online, that can be the best thing that can happen to you from a social engagement standpoint, if you really think about it, because that can lead to the kinds of conversations with the people who you do want following you, and the person being a poopy head is not the person you want following you. That can actually get them more engaged with you and develop deeper, more trusting relationships. That's why when people come to me and say, I need to head off all the objections to my presentation before they come up by building it into the presentation, that's why I advise them not to do that. Be aware of what might come up. But if you head off every objection you can think of into your presentation, A, something you didn't think of is going to come up, and B, and then you're not prepared for it, and B, you've just cut out the most important learning tool with your audience that you can have, which is they object and you talk about it. And if it's an attack and you talk about it reasonably and they turn into a wild, yelling person, they look bad and you've just solidified your point with everybody else in the room. So actually, I think objections are great. Something we will do is over explain or excusify what we're doing or justify what we're doing. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to over explain it. I fall into that trap because I'm a verbalizer. Or you stop doing it altogether. So I think, so Plumber Mickey says, pleasing others too often leads to multiple divorces. Yeah, ask me how I know. Exactly. It's not this just like live for yourself, be selfish, please yourself, and never work with anybody ever again. But if you know where your vision is, if you know where your purpose is, if you have a family purpose and you're all working towards that together, you have a much better chance of success than if you do it the other way. Tactical just walked by and I waved a coffee cup at him and he's kind enough to make me refill coffee. So I'm super happy. So I think if you let that pressure keep you from moving forward or doing what your purpose is, you've not only hurt yourself, you've not only let people get through your boundaries, you've not only undermined your credibility, you also lost momentum. So you can have an argument and lose it online, quotes, and end up with a lot more people on your side, right? You can end up more solid in your opinion if it's an opinion, but if you have a reasonable argument. But if you lose momentum in what you're doing, that is the biggest danger we're talking about here, because losing momentum and stopping to do the work that you need to do to move forward because of something somebody else said means they won and you lost. And even if it's just that you spend an afternoon looking for that validation, you lost that whole afternoon when you could have been doing the thing that you needed to do most, talking to people because you were upset. Now, I am not trying to say it's not okay to get upset. We all have feelings. We have to have strategies for feeling our feelings, and it's not bad to be upset. It's that indulging in the 5 hours or the 2 days of upset. And yes, Squeaks just showed up on the live stream for a second. I see Darkwing Dave saw Squeaks. So why do I even know about this? Because my biggest mistake before I decided to change my life and do what I do now came because I was letting other people basically define who I was and define what I was good at. And they were wrong. They would be like, your superpower is this, Nicole. So we're going to make you do this. And I'd be sitting there thinking, actually, my superpower is that. But okay, maybe if I do that well, you'll let me finally do the thing I really need to be doing. Right. And then they would say, oh, well, I do the thing well. And then they'd say, okay, good. We get credit for that. Or something would come up because they'd ask me to do the thing in a way I knew it wasn't going to work. And they'd be like, well, that's your fault because you need to be better at your superpower, right? I was really good at building community and engagement. And I had a position that needed just those things to happen. I was working, in a field and a quick study at new internet social media tools when that stuff was considered not cutting edge, but bleeding edge, right? Like the first day of Twitter, everybody's like, what's this Twitter thing? And I'd already been well immersed in social communications before that happened. To be good at social marketing at that time, you had to be good at building relationships and community. And I can teach. I've always been able to teach. So that early time in social media development was made for a person with my skills. A lot of things has changed in social media since then, but those foundational skills of building community still really help. If you can layer that with advertising savvy, Sue Zoldak, it's even better, right? So what they wanted me to do was not that. They wanted me to find other people to do that. I was getting basically boomer experts in to teach people how to use social media who had no flippin' idea how it worked. And I'd say, yeah, but what we need to do is be, engaging with people and put out things that invite conversation and then have a conversation. And then the boomer expert would say, we don't want conversation or objections. This is why I'm defensive about the objection thing, because we need to head off all objections at the past because we don't want people saying bad stuff about us. Got a news for you, my friends. If you don't want people to say bad things about you, don't say things on the internet at all. Just don't. So I had to hide what I knew was the right approach. In order to keep that contract, I had to bring in experts I knew were giving terrible advice. And whenever anything went well, because I jumped in and saved it because I did what I knew was right anyway, I had to give them credit for it. And whenever I took credit for it, I was told that was not allowed because my brand wasn't as important as their brand, right? So I would be criticized, even when I did well, I would be criticized. And that set me in this cycle of trying to do things I wasn't good at, to finally get the freedom I wanted to do what I knew was the right thing that needed to be done. And you know what that cost me? That cost me time, not just a day of time, not just 3 days of time. That cost me years of time. Can you imagine where this podcast would be if I would have launched it in 2009? Can you even when I was like literally sitting in 2009 going, I just want to homestead full time. I want to stop doing this thing. Can we make it work? And then I didn't. I took the damn contract. And more years of time were lost until 2016 when I finally launched the podcast. It also really hurt my relationships. I spent thousands of dollars in lost income because of time wasted. I spent actual money on things I knew wouldn't work because I was forced into it. I damaged my reputation for success because I was doing things a way I knew wouldn't work, and I strained relationships. And I developed a long, enduring, still haven't completely gotten rid of it, discomfort and distaste for anybody telling me you've done a good job or giving me admiration, because I was so beat up from that experience that I didn't think I could do anything well by the end of it. I accepted this unhealthy relationship on that project because I was afraid of not having enough money coming in to pay for my homestead. I could have said no at any time. So you hear that and you think, well, those guys were poopy heads. No, I could have said no. I was 100% in control of that situation. I could have said no at any time. And that's all I needed to do was say no. And that year that I was like, I think I just want a homestead, start doing that and start talking about it online and start building the community that we have now. Like, think how much further ahead we'd all be if I had been cultivating relationships with y'all for 10 more years. Like 10 more years that I lost. 10 years I lost. 10 years. 10. I could have taken a gas station or factory job locally here. I can work in retail. I've done it before. They'd be like, you're overqualified. I'd be like, yes, I am. You have 6 months. And what I know now that I didn't know then is I can always earn money. I can find a way to earn money. I can work hard. I didn't have enough faith in my ability to do that, apparently, to say no and not have the money coming in that I thought I had to have. I stayed because I thought compliance would buy freedom to do what I knew was right. But worse, I thought I could change the people in charge. They would finally see the light. They would finally see that while the old methods are useful, there were some changes in the world and how we communicate that were necessary. I thought if I just tried harder, they would see the mistakes they were making. And I'm really good at working harder. And I was wrong. The only person I persuaded was me. And I did not need to persuade me. I needed to get out. That's the trap when you try to get people to see your side. If you have had an ongoing iteration with somebody over and over and over, and one of you in these comments, you know that's you, over and over, and it's just never going anywhere. They're not seeing your view. You really want them to understand why your way is the right way. Let that go. They're never going to get it. They're never going to get it. And them not getting it and you continuing to engage with them in that way is letting them tell you how to live your life instead of just going and doing what you know you need to do. In fact, a year ago, I had an opportunity come up that looked pretty good. And it would have put me exactly back in that kind of a situation where I would be needing to do something the way the person who asked me to do the thing wanted it done. And I already knew the way they wanted it done was not the way it needed to be done. And I would have worked so hard to do that. And Holler Roast would not have had the December that we have had I done that. I didn't get that income, that opportunity, but I also didn't waste the time making a situation work kind of that was set up for failure. Right? And everything in my life that's important to me is better now than it was when I said no to that. Even though I didn't get that income, and it would be really nice to have, a chunk of change to do some things here all at once. That situation was designed for me to lose and for them to win, and I walked away. Because that's not the kind of business undertaking I'm interested in. I want alliances like with Kiri and that rub where she's used Holler Roast coffee in it, and we've put together flavors I really like on a meat rub. It works on various ones. It makes cooking so easy when I'm in a hurry and I don't feel like, because I usually just take a bunch of different spices, right? When I'm in a hurry, I know it's going to taste good. I get it on there. It's done. And she makes money on it. And I make some money on it when you buy it, right? That's the kind of thing. I want it to work for everybody, not just one person or the other person. And the thing is, time is so much more painful to lose than income, guys. Because time and attention is what it takes to cultivate the things in your life that you want. And you deserve to have a wonderful life. And if you don't think you do, if you think you need to pay your dues and just do this one more unhealthy thing for another couple of months or another couple of years so that you can finally have the life that you'd like to have, look at that. I mean, yeah, sometimes you got to work hard through hard things to get to where you need to be. But sometimes you are further delaying what's going to be so great for you because you are not willing to say no to something because you're stuck in some sort of a mental trap. Could be I need income, could be I can't leave this area because family is here. It could be all sorts of different things. Not telling you have to leave your family, by the way, but there's lots of I hear lots of excuses. I'll just put it that way. And that's the criticism trap, right? Somebody criticizes you, you take it personally, you go seek validation, you spiral, you waste a bunch of time, and you stop doing the thing you know is the right thing you need to do. And when you stop, they win. And when you waste time, they win. If they're your competitor, by the way, on the business sense, and they waste your time, they win. So what should you do instead? Because not all criticism is equal. Sometimes we need to hear some critical things in order to get better, right? This is one of my gauges. About 1% of online criticism is valid. If you really look at it and you look at people calling each other poopy heads online and you look at why they're calling each other poopy heads, usually it has nothing like the poopy head hurl has nothing to do really with what the original thing was. It's very rarely valid. It's just that I need to win the argument or I need to spend time and emotion on this or I exploded. That means when people do inappropriate things in your comments, probably 1% of it's valid, which means most of it isn't. The thing about useful feedback is it almost always comes privately from people who want you to succeed. Margot all the time will tell me privately, you spelled a word wrong, Nicole. Okay, that's helpful, right? She doesn't go online and just say like, what an idiot. You spelled that word, blah, 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 blah. Look, we all know I spell word wrongs and I typo stuff. I'm doing less of it now because of Margot. Because I heard that. When somebody's like, what an idiot, I'm like, I don't need to listen to this anymore. That's part of the trap, right? Because that criticism is valid. It would be good if I didn't have a bunch of typos all the time. Public criticism is almost always somebody seeking status by putting you down or virtue signaling. And when you participate with them, you're just helping that happen. So I think to get control of that cycle, you got to slow your roll a little bit, which is hard to do at the speed of the internet. But when you get public criticism, usually it's not worth engaging with. But it might hurt your feelings. And it's okay to feel the feeling. Feel the feeling. Have your cup of hollow roast or whatever you want to do to take a minute. And only take a minute. And then ask yourself the most important question about criticism. Is there any truth in that, what they said? Like, objectively speaking, is there any truth in it? If the answer is no, they're totally wrong, which I had one like that on YouTube a while ago where the thing they said was just wrong and they didn't understand the context. And it wasn't, they were just mad at women. Disregard it and move on. In that case, I didn't say anything. I think Tactical saw it and he said something eventually. Okay. If it's yes, if there is some truth in it, identify the real issue because often the complaint is worded in a way that sounds really hurtful. And when you look under it and you're like, oh, that really hurt. You're like, oh, they're critiquing my spending. And the reason that hurts is I know in that case, the spending was fine. But in this other case, I should have actually kept a closer eye on my money. And if I did that more consistently, I wouldn't have any debt. Just to make up a completely non-emotional example. And if it's different than what they said, that's okay. And then fix it quietly in that situation. Or more loudly if warranted. If what they said is that meme that you posted, Nicole, is factually inaccurate, which has happened to me. I have reshared things from sources I thought were trustworthy without double checking it, and then I was wrong. That's also a result of not slowing your roll, by the way. I actually don't take the meme down. I write, update, I was wrong, so people will still see that I understand I'm wrong. I will fix something like that loudly. It just depends on what kind of fix you need to do. And then if it's a comment or something, or if it's somebody who comes to you, decide if it warrants a response. Like, do you really need to answer this thing in public? So it's a public critique. Do I need to answer it in order to say something? Did they accuse me of embezzling money from a charity and I didn't? Probably warrants a response, right? Realize, though, when you respond to something that's a public criticism, your response is not to persuade that person, because that goes back to, do you need to convince the person who never wants to believe you? No. Your response is for everybody else. That's who you're talking to in that situation. I recently got an inappropriate YouTube comment that was like subtly inappropriate. And I saw it and I was like, I'm not answering that. And I walked away and I forgot about it. And then because of how YouTube works, it came back up. And I was like, what do I do? I don't really want to, if I say something to it, I give them power. And then they're like, ha ha ha, I got her. And then I forgot about it for another week or two. And then it came back up because stupid YouTube, and I just deleted it. Right. Because it did not warrant a response. But sometimes I get things that do. Sometimes I get somebody who says, you know, that show you did on blah, 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 I had this other experience, and then we have a conversation about it. So Plumber Mickey says, original life plan was work till 65, then homestead. After Self-Reliance Festival, have adjusted plan to fix the house this year so it's sellable and then go homestead. Plenty of people telling me I should wait. Yeah, nobody's in support of you on that except for the people who need to be. But I'm in support of you doing what you know is the right next step for yourself. And that's the thing. So anyway, you don't cultivate clarity in an instant reaction, but you do cultivate it in the pause. And that's why sometimes you do need to slow your roll, but sometimes it's just happening at the speed of light. And that's when, like, tapping into a friend, like, am I wrong? Like, should I say something? That can work, but don't turn that into a whole afternoon bitch session, if you will. I think owning the conversation when it does matter is the best thing you can do. If it warrants a response, am I the right person to respond, or should somebody else? Can I bring this to my platform and respond there correctly? Or am I going to engage in comments on YouTube? I'll tell you what, bringing it back to your website, you're in control. Changing the narrative to, oh, so what you're really critiquing is this. Actually, I do that wrong, and this is what I've done to fix it. That can do it. If not, maybe talk to a friend to let the emotion out. Like, validate your emotion. Maybe don't. If you don't, maybe go for a walk. Maybe have a cup of coffee. And keep doing what you know is right. Right? Because it's up to you to cultivate what happens in your life. And because of what I know about you, my anxious listener, some of you are very anxious. Some of you have confessed to me your anxieties. And I am by no means undermining that. You feel how you feel. This is what I know. I know about also my non-anxious listeners. You are talented. You are thoughtful, and you're full of insight, and you know a lot, and you're good at things. You have hopes and ideas and dreams and a vision that fits you. Some of you know what that vision is. Some of you are going to listen to the My Three Things episodes between Christmas and New Year's and work on it. Some of you in the comments have done a great job of setting that up for yourself. And sometimes you just get a little off course because somebody said something that hurt. Well, did it hurt because somebody said something that hurt and they were being hurtful, and just the fact that somebody's hurtful from you is hurtful? It's okay to feel bad about that, but don't let that stop your forward momentum. Or was there some truth in it and you're going to make a little adjustment? Your job is not to live up to that other person's definitions. Your job is to live up to your definitions. Your job is to build your relationships, your purpose, your daily progress. Not get sidetracked by somebody who thinks your curtains are ugly. You don't have time to grow somebody else's weeds in your garden. You want to plant and cultivate what you want for your life. And when you do that, you start letting go of some of the things that are causing the anxiety. Because a lot of times, my anxious listener, the reason you're anxious is stuff that happened in the past, but also a niggling feeling that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. A niggling feeling that all the time you just spent putting together that fundraiser for the school was not where you should put your time. Maybe it is for you, but maybe it isn't for this other person. And that's because you haven't properly decided what needs to be in your life. Just like you would in your garden bed, right? Where what you plant is what you want. And then when you discover poison hemlock growing in your garden, which I did this year, you want to pull that poison hemlock out. It was so funny because it was by a tag marked parsley. And if you've ever seen young poison hemlock, it does not look like parsley, but it has wispy-ish parsley-like leaves, but they're in a different formation. And I saw that and I was thinking, man, that is unlike any parsley I've ever seen, but it was too young to eat, thank goodness. And it had been ordered. It was from a parsley that had been ordered online. So they had a poison hemlock seed in there. A little scary. And it grew a little bit more. And it got about 3 inches tall. And I was like, it just really doesn't look like parsley to me. That, my friend, was a poisoned plant planted in my garden that I was cultivating. That is not where you want to go. You want to take this time right now to identify all those poison plants. The way I figured out what it was, it had a strong smell. And Tactical was in the pasture, and I know we had some little baby poison hemlocks up there that aren't gone yet. I said, "Could you bring me one of those?" And he brought it, and I smelled it, and I was like, that is the same exact smell as this other plant, and it looks the same. And I pulled that sucker out of there as fast as I could. I don't have time to grow weeds. I don't have time to grow your weeds. I don't have time to grow anybody's weeds. Decide what belongs in your life, pull the rest, and make the next year about living the life the way you want to live it. Living the life you should be living. Doing things the way you know they should be done, because that's what really matters. Which brings me to the word of the year. Last week, I am sorry to say, I was not ready to share a word of the year, and I was hoping you guys would come up with it in the comments, as you know. And as I really dove into where we're going next year and this need to stay closer to home and to work on some of the things that I know we need to work on, the word that came up was cultivate. So my word for 2026 is cultivate, and not just cultivating outside, but cultivating in myself what's needed for us to flow into the next iteration here. So for those of you who helped, thank you very much. I thought about cultivate, nurture, caritas, and a bunch of other words, homestead, a whole bunch of stuff. Elevate came up, but cultivate. And it seemed to fit for some reason with this episode really well. If you are hearing this and thinking, oh no, I am exactly in that place, know this: when you choose to stop letting other people live your life for you and stop being privy to the peer pressure, it's not a change that just happens like a switch. You take a step at a time and it gets better and better and better. And the first step is make sure you know your life vision and purpose. Develop that with your family or your husband or wife if you're married, so that you're marching in the same direction. And then start making those decisions on, is this thing really serving us? Do I need to say no and it's a painful no? And then practice saying no. You can even be polite and say no, thank you. Anyway, thank you for joining our last show of 2025. That is a solo Nicole show. I will be back on Friday with Tactical at 12:30. And that'll be our last show. But also we'll be starting the Night Before Christmas series. And then, as I mentioned, my 3 things will happen. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at Hollow Roast. 2, consider becoming a member. To find out more about that, go to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. And I see 18 Rhapsody says stability, growth, and harvest. I don't have a 1 word. Hey, get over on our LFTN Telegram group and kind of interact with people. They might help you. But I bet you'll find a word if you start really honing it down. So that's how I got to cultivate. I was like, home, growth, improvement, taking care of myself. All this stuff happened. Anyway, make it a great week, guys.